Do14 is on the posterior midline, below the spinous process of C7 in a depression. Do4 is on the posterior midline, below the spinous process of L2. Bladder 11 is 1.5 cm lateral to the posterior midline, below the spinous process of T1. Going to find the inferior border of T1 and come directly lateral to it on the height of the paraspinal muscle.
Sanjiao 14 is located inferior and posterior to the acromion process at the origin of the deltoid muscles. The easiest way to find this point is to take the weight of the person's arm and palpate in between the heads of the deltoid to identify the anterior, lateral and posterior heads of the deltoid. If you push forwards, you should be able to feel the bony extremity of the acromion process. Sanjiao 14 is inferior to the acromion process in between the posterior and lateral heads of the deltoid. It forms a nice curved line along the edge of the acromion with large intestine 15 and small intestine 10.
Lung 1 is 1 cm inferior and slightly lateral to lung 2. To find the 1 cm, find the width of an intercostal space close to the sternum and transfer it over. Ren 17 is on the anterior midline, level with the 4th intercostal space. Ren 21 is on the anterior midline, at the manubrium, midway between Ren 22 and Ren 20. Large intestine 4, you're going to find the length of the second metacarpal bone. So running your finger down, finding the base, making sure that you're not actually on the carpal bones themselves, finding the midpoint of that shaft of bone, coming between the first and second metacarpals, nearer to the second than the first in the muscle.
Large intestine 11 is located at the midpoint between lung 5 and the prominence of the lateral epicondyle of the humerus. Typically, this is at the end of the transverse cubital crease when the arm is fully flexed. Sanjiao points on the forearm are best located with the arm laying flat on the bed and the elbow turned outwards. To find Sanjiao 5, come 2 cm proximal to Sanjiao 4, in between the radius and the ulna. You should be on the radial side of the tendon of extensor digitorum communis. If the person wiggles their fingers, this tendon will come into relief.
Pericardium 6 is on the flexor aspect of the forearm. It's 2 cm proximal from pericardium 7 and it's in between the two tendons, palmaris longus and flexor carpal radialis. Pericardium 7 is on the flexor aspect of the wrist. It's level with heart 7 and between two tendons, palmaris longus and flexor carpal radialis. Some people don't have this palmaris longus tendon, in which case you'd just be going ulnar to this flexor carpal radialis. So finding heart 7, articulate the wrist, coming between those two tendons, that if you can't see them, you can get the person to join their thumb and their little finger together, and that will highlight those two tendons. And just relax again.
Pericardium 8 is found on the palmar aspect of the hand in this nice dip which is proximal to the junction of the heads of the second and third metacarpals. The point is just a little closer to the head of the third metacarpal. Lung 7 is located 1.5 cm proximal to lung 9. It's located just a little lateral to the main line running from lung 9 to lung 5, in a cleft between the tendons of abductor pollicis longus and brachioradialis. It's located just at the base of the flare of the styloid process of the radius. In this position, the point is just about visible on the corner of the arm. If you locate the point too radial, it's falling onto the yang surface of the arm. Kidney 2 is located distal and inferior to the tuberosity of the navicular bone. To find this bone, place your finger on the medial malleolus and then move down and slightly anterior until you come to a very prominent bony lump. If you come too far forwards, you will fall onto a different bone, the cuneiform bone, but it doesn't stand out so much. When you find this bony lump, mark your point, kidney 2, just distal and inferior to it. Kidney 6 is located 1 cm directly inferior to the prominence of the medial malleolus. Palpate down 1 cm and feel for a cleft in between two tendons. Kidney 6 lies in that cleft. A common mistake is to palpate down only 0.5 cm and to try to locate this point in the ankle joint. It's not in the ankle joint, it's in the cleft between the two tendons that are inferior to it. Spleen 6 is located 3 cm superior to the medial malleolus, 1/2 finger breadth posterior to the medial crest of the tibia. Be sure not to place this point actually on the bone. Gallbladder 31 is located directly inferior to the prominence of the greater trochanter, 7 cm superior to the inferior border of the patella. To find the prominence of the greater trochanter, press the hips on either side to feel for a bony protuberance. To double check that you've found the greater trochanter, Rock the leg from side to side and feel the bony protuberance moving underneath your hand. The distance between the greater trochanter and the inferior border of the patella is 19 sun. If you divide this distance into 3 equal units, each one of these units will be 1/6 and 1/3 of a sun. As the point we're after is 7 sun superior to the inferior border of the patella, it lays just a little above the superior border of the lower third. Spleen 10 is located 2 sun superior to the superior border of the patella in a tender depression on the height of the muscle vastus medialis. We know the patella is 2 sun long, so we can use this to calculate how high up the leg this point should be. A common mistake is to mark this point too far anterior or medial. A good location tip is to have the person press their leg down into the bed, which will bring vastus medialis into relief, and you should be able to palpate the depression in the height of it that forms spleen 10. Gallbladder 34 is located in a depression which is anterior and inferior to the head of the fibula. To locate the head of the fibula, find the tibial tuberosity and move laterally until you find a prominent bony landmark. Be sure that you don't confuse the head of the fibula with the lateral condyle of the tibia, which is closer to the kneecap. The easiest way to find spleen 9 is to palpate gently up the medial crest of the tibia until you fall into a nice depression formed by the medial crest of the tibia and the inferior border of the tibial condyle. This point's in a depression. It's not on bone, it's not on muscle. It's in a tender depression. Stomach 36 is located approximately 13 sun superior to the prominence of the lateral malleolus on the anterior border of tibialis anterior. The easiest way to find it is to palpate down the tibial tuberosity. Find the base of the tibial tuberosity and move slightly laterally until you fall into a nice dip on the anterior border of tibialis anterior. This point is also 3 sun inferior to the inferior border of the patella.